50,000 years ago, Europe was haunted by giants that looked exactly like you, but could crush your skull with one hand. We are taught to view our ancient ancestors as primitive survivors. Ape-like remnants cowering in the dark, shivering in caves, waiting for history to begin. This is a comforting fiction. A lie designed to make the modern mind feel superior to its betters. Look at the architecture of the skull. The modern human brain volume averages 1,350 cubic centimeters. The Cro-Magnon brain volume averaged 1,514 cubic centimeters. A heavier, denser, more complex neurological engine. Look deeper into the skeleton. The clavicle. A 19-centimeter collarbone. A mechanical lever engineered for catastrophic violence. They were faster, larger, and possessed more computational biological power than any human alive today. They were the biologically overclocked pro-version of humanity. So the paradox emerges. If the Cro-Magnon was the ultimate human chassis, why did nature decide to replace them with us? They stood taller than the average modern professional athlete. 1.91 meters of height. Carrying 20% higher lean muscle mass. This is not just biological tissue. It is a reinforced titanium chassis. A high-density frame designed to withstand impact forces that would splinter a modern human skeleton into shrapnel. But a heavy chassis is useless without the hardware to run it. Enter the globular brain case. The biological supercomputer housing. It is wider, deeper, and structurally superior to your own. At the back of the skull rests the occipital bun. A prominent skeletal bulge inherited through ancient interbreeding with other hominids. Think of it as the external hard drive of the Pleistocene. It processed vast amounts of visual data, allowing them to track movement in extreme low-light environments. At the front, the frontal lobe. An overclocked processor. It maps spatial geometry and tactical variables at speeds we can no longer naturally achieve. We know exactly how they deployed this processing power. In the fossil record, there is a 50,000-year-old cold case. Neanderthal remains, found punctured not by close-quarters struggle, but by high-velocity kinetic impacts. Cro-Magnons did not wrestle their rival hominid cousins in the mud. They assassinated them from a distance. They calculated trajectory, wind speed, and target velocity in real time, launching projectiles with brutal efficiency. Look inside the shoulder joint as it rotates. Translucent bone white. Dark crimson muscle fibers snapping tight. Neon cyan stress points illuminating under immense torque. This is the 19-centimeter collarbone at work. A quarter longer than yours. It functions as a biomechanical fulcrum. When a Cro-Magnon threw a spear, this extended lever amplified the kinetic output. They generated over 150 joules of terminal kinetic force. The equivalent of a modern handgun bullet, delivered entirely through biological torque. They were apex machines. Biomax built to dominate a hostile world. So why are they gone? The answer lies in the ruthless economics of biology. Nature did not delete the Cro-Magnon because they were weak. Nature deleted them because they were too expensive. A hyperdense muscular frame and a 1,500 cubic centimeter processor require a massive, continuous intake of calories to function. When the climate shifted and the megafauna collapsed, their greatest evolutionary advantage became a fatal liability. They were an industrial turbine in a world that suddenly ran out of fuel. The late Pleistocene, 56,800 years ago, was not merely a landscape. It was a planetary-scale meat grinder. It only permitted the entry of absolute apex variance. Crushing atmospheric cold pressed against the skin like a physical weight. Blinding blizzards erased the horizon. In the absolute darkness, their occipital buns processed faint lunar reflections off the ice, turning pitch-black valleys into illuminated hunting grounds. Through the howling wind cuts a bone-chilling resonance. A vulture femur, hollowed and drilled with mathematical precision. A bone flute vibrating at exactly 340 Hz. Acoustic architecture rising above the roar of the Ice Age. They survived by extracting every available calorie from a frozen earth. Cracking open a mammoth femur. The warm, gelatinous, calorie-dense marrow sliding down their throats. But when the mammoths failed, the biological engines still demanded fuel. In the dark recesses of Gough's cave in prehistoric England, the true cost of survival is written in the bone. Human skulls, meticulously stripped of flesh. The temporal and zygomatic bones carved away to create functional drinking cups. Children, butchered with the exact same clinical precision used on red deer. They did not merely survive the ice. They turned their own species into cutlery. They consumed their own bloodline to fuel their overclocked frames. They endured the last glacial maximum. But they did not conquer it. They survived by compromising. By breeding with smaller, weaker hominids. By diluting their immense, expensive DNA into the modern human gene pool. They beat the Ice Age, but they could not beat the one thing that defeats all apex predators: time. We look in the mirror and assume we are the pinnacle of the hominid line. We are not. We are the self-domesticated version. We are the downgraded, energy-efficient models. Smaller. Weaker. Neurologically capped. We require fewer calories to operate. We tolerate higher population densities with less immediate violence. We assume our smartphones and our fiber optic networks make us superior beings. But our ancestors possessed larger biological hardware inside their own skulls to solve spatial and tactical problems we can no longer even perceive. Think back to the skeletal architecture. That 19-centimeter collarbone. It was never just a lever for throwing spears. It was the physical anchor for a level of human potential that the modern world has literally made impossible to house. A biomechanical monument to a time when humanity was a force of nature, rather than a manager of it. The modern world does not have room for the Cro-Magnon. We built a civilization of supreme comfort, and in doing so, we bred the Titan out of our own bloodline. We look at the fossil record and construct a narrative of continuous, unbroken progress. We tell ourselves that we are climbing toward the stars. Look at the reduced volume of your own skull. Look at the fragile, narrowed architecture of your shoulders. If evolution is a ladder, why does it feel like we have been descending it for 12,000 years?